Welcome back, gorgeous ladies and mostly gentlemen, to the Gamer Muscle YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you the best and worst things about iRacing, and we're going to navigate them like a slalom skier, starting with a positive, then going to a negative, and then go back to a positive and a negative again until we get to the bottom of the ski slope. Everyone's confused, and there's lots of angry iRacers. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. Now, because I'm feeling generous, we're going to start with a positive. And the biggest positive, one that I don't think anybody would really dispute, is that iRacing offers the best, on average, ranked full grid racing. It's a simple fact of the matter that no other simulator really offers you the ability to have a grid size of 10 plus people online in multiplayer pretty much every hour of the day, with a choice of at least 5 to 8 cars every day of the week. Essentially, you're pretty much guaranteed when you load up iRacing to be able to find a race with a good number of people online and have a well-structured, reasonably ranked, pretty good quality online race. And of course, if you pick times that are more active and more in line with when other simulators are more active, you'll tend to find even more cars driving, more people driving, with the bonus of even better quality racing because there's a larger pool of people to rank you with. Essentially, if you drive at peak times in iRacing, it'll be like one of those Chinese or Japanese swimming pools where they're just, you know, someone could drown in it and no one would notice. So that is probably the best part of iRacing.com service. Let's get to a negative as we slide in the opposite direction. The way the content is sold, let's face it, is absolutely atrocious in iRacing. Not only is iRacing one of the most expensive games you can play, if not the most expensive game, but at the end of the day, whether or not something's expensive for a given person is subjective. So, you know, it might actually offer that value to some people and the cost is neither here nor there. Especially if you're like some iRacers that literally don't play any other games, all they do is iRacing. They don't even play other simulators, they just do iRacing. For those people, I can see how they get that value from whatever they're charged quite easily. So ignoring the price to some extent, the real issue is how the content is sold, in that you not only have to buy a subscription to the service to actually access cars, but you have to buy cars and tracks individually, or license cars and tracks individually on top of this subscription. Now, there's no offline AI racing time trials or any way to access any of the content that you've licensed unless you do have an active subscription. So essentially, the content is lost if you don't renew your subscription. There's, you know, that's it. No access to what you've spent maybe hundreds, if not multiple hundreds of dollars on. The worst aspect of selling the content, how they've chosen to do it, really is more about how it actively discourages people from taking part in series that have less popular cars and more niche cars. And you essentially end up with the problem that you get with other games, where when they start doing DLC pack after DLC pack, it gets harder and harder to get participation in stuff that's even further on the fringes of the already niche sim racing scene. So it's almost as if iRacing are actively trying to discourage people from accessing certain cars on the service, and the end result is you find everyone bunched into a certain selection of cars, and some cars that are really good fun getting rather ignored. Now let's have a sip of the tea and be happy for a minute. Ease of use and setup. Now this might seem like a simple thing, but a lot of developers have got this very wrong. And it's a simple fact that downloading and setting up iRacing for the first time, and for first time users that maybe have never played any sort of simulation, is incredibly simple and really streamlined. Really, other than the general website design, which is rather confusing, but currently being addressed, the iRacing software itself is actually really straightforward to use. The game automatically detects all your devices, also has a really good wheel setup wizard that automatically calibrates your wheel and gets your rotation 1-to-1 with the simulator, also detects your pedals. it just makes it really easy to get your stuff up and running. Whereas with some simulators, and especially in the past when iRacing first came out around about 2007 or so, they really did lead the way in terms of making it simple, and it still is the case that it works really well to just get things going and up and running. Now, I would say, you know, some things are a little bit off with the interface, like so there's some buttons that seem to be not just on a single page, they're a bit over the place, and sometimes setting the audio device can be a little bit annoying. But I think out of all the simulators and in general, the ease of use and initial setup is really up there, and something that iRacing have done an absolutely fantastic job with. Congratulations, good job. Let me just read the headlines for some tabloid papers. Great, I'm now angry. Let's go back to some negatives. How the game handles laggers or people with bad pings. Now, though iRacing for the most part actually has some of the best netcode, and when people have good pings it looks absolutely extraordinary. The cars are really move around the track nicely, position really fantastic, collision can work really well with a good ping. But when people have bad pings, and especially should they drop out, the car basically just turns into a super modded hydraulic ghetto lowrider, and sometimes launching 5+ meters in the air, along with intermittent teleportations to the Starship Enterprise. Needless to say, it's very distracting, especially when you're unlucky enough to be trying to overtake one of these quantum entangled racers. And it just baffles my mind that they don't have a better solution for this. Either, you know, kick someone from the race permanently if they go over a threshold so many times, ghost them permanently. I don't know, just something different from the current ghetto lowrider solution. It's been like this for so long, I don't know how it stayed. It drives me absolutely despair. Just had a back rub from a gorgeous Ukrainian model, and we can talk about another positive. The in-game voice over IP. Now, it might seem like a superfluous addition to a driving simulator, and I know actually some people don't like it. There is a mute button, get over it. But voice over IP, for me, massively increases the entertainment value from the simulator. There is literally nothing quite like hearing people from all around the world screaming due to getting pummeled at T1. Outside of the enjoyment of other people suffering, the voice over IP can actually be really handy just to help communicate to others on the track what your intentions are, what's going on, explanations as to why you accidentally locked your brakes and drove into the back of them. And it's just also nice for the end of a race where drivers can both argue with each other or congratulate each other depending on how well the race went, and if they actually had a good time doing close racing or want to Sebastian Vettel the finger up at someone. Ultimately, it just makes the simulator and the sim racing experience a lot more human and feel a lot less sterile than it often can do if you're just driving around with other cars that essentially could almost be AI. So I think it's an absolutely awesome thing, and it's awesome that it's integrated directly into the sim, and it's a shame it's not in more games, since it's been in games like Counter-Strike since the 1430s. Pour some spoiled milk into perfectly good tea, and we're back on the angry side. How the game handles collision damage. iRacing damage appears to work on a sort of 70-20-10 principle, in that 70% of the contacts result in totally random amount of damage, 20% of the contacts result in the correct amount of damage, and 10% of the contacts, regardless of if you T-bone someone at full speed, allow you to leave the crime scene with no damage to your car whatsoever. Perhaps even more annoyingly is the way damage is represented, with it basically just pushing your steering wheel slightly to the left or the right, almost as if your car is perfectly fine but decided to just deflate on one side through the depression of being punished by the iRacing gods. Needless to say, in my opinion, Schrodinger's car damage is not particularly enjoyable and not the most realistic of damage mechanics, and it's a combination of the randomness of the damage along with how the damage is executed that makes it specifically frustrating in iRacing, and you know, you'll be having an absolutely banging race, really nice, side-by-side driving. Guy in front makes a slight mistake, you make a slight mistake, and that's it. Race ruined by the game effectively doing something stupid. Deep breath, meditation complete. Another positive, the VR support is absolutely fantastic. Now, for those of you that like to look like a bad 80s sci-fi film extra, VR support is incredibly important for all simulators now. And when it comes to driving simulators, the ability to feel as if you're actually in the car with a heightened sense of what the car is doing is pretty much invaluable, and it gets worse. The more you use VR, the less you can move away from it. You start to look for visual cues in VR, you get used to the depth perception. It makes driving on in the land of in 2D land, it makes it driving a lot harder. So it's really nice that iRacing have done an absolutely fantastic job of supporting the VR. And not only does the game automatically actually detect which head-mounted display you're using, with it supporting both the Oculus Rift and OpenVR, but for the most part, the simulator actually also runs really well in virtual reality, which has been a problem with some simulators in the past. It's got a lot better actually in the last sort of 8 months or so. But all in all, iRacing just offers really solid VR support. Another really nice feature of iRacing with its VR support is that it does the mirrors properly, and it's only Live for Speed and now Project Cars 2 that offer that. So when you move your head, the mirrors move correspondingly. Now, they're not three-dimensional, but personally I don't notice that. But it adds a huge amount to the immersion, but also allows you to check behind you without having a ginormous virtual mirror, and automatically gives you the sort of coverage of the inside, the ability to reduce blind spots. It's just fantastic that that's supported, and to me, as I say, it's a really big immersive boost. So well done iRacing for your VR support. It's much appreciated and a really well done aspect of the simulator. Now I'm going to move to a contentious negative here. People are going to disagree with me. I don't care. I've got a nuclear bomb shelter in my garden. We're perfectly safe from the horde of iRacing fans. What, to me, iRacing has some of the worst force feedback in sim racing of the top simulators. Now, though the force feedback in iRacing does a fantastic job of bringing the back of the cars in line, the self-aligning force feedback, absolutely superb, and it does a really good job of communicating track bumps from the exquisite laser scan tracks. When it comes to actually communicating the front end grip, the subtle nature of the tyres, and overall state of the car, the sim is about as clear as an English train station platform announcement. R-Factor 2, Assetto Corsa, Race Room, pretty much every other simulator offers force feedback on another level to iRacing when it comes to actually letting the driver know what speed they can start to enter a corner at, how much power mid-corner will cause the car to go past the optimal grip, how much grip you have on the front as you turn in the wheel. Just the actual details that, personally, because I'm not sat in a moving vehicle, are rather useful to be conveyed in some way through the force feedback. Now, bear in mind, I'm using a direct drive wheel. I've spent hours fiddling with force feedback. It's something I love, force feedback in games. Haptics is a personal, weird hobby of mine. I've tried external tools with iRacing, and I've got it working to what I think is as good as it could be. I've tried other people's iRacing setups where they've said they're happy with it, and you know, I'm pretty sure I've got a reasonable grasp on iRacing force feedback and the reality of it and what the game actually tells you and what's going on. And honestly, I just don't know. I just think it is worse than the other simulators. So, probably made everybody angry there that's hardcore iRacing fans. As I say, there are aspects of the force feedback that are good. The high frequency of the force feedback, especially with the some of the external tools you get. The self-aligning, the way you can actually set up the torque to be 1-to-1 if you want to. There's a bunch of good things there, but in terms of the core of the driving and getting information from the simulator, I think that's where it really fails. I mean, I've even used an AccuForce wheel with it and used their additional software with it and tried to put stuff over the top of it. In some ways it improves it, in some ways it doesn't, but ultimately I just think the force feedback's terrible in iRacing. please, iRacing, just do something different with the force feedback. Anything got to be better than where it is now. There you go. Let's. I expect the hate mail comments from that. Let's go over to a positive. The track quality in iRacing. You know, the tracks are expensive, and I don't like how you have to use a combination of licensing, as I said, with the subscription plus the track and car content, and it does cost a lot. But you can't deny the track quality, especially anything that was produced in the last sort of 2.5-3 years, is absolutely amazing. The simulator only has laser scan tracks for a start, and I know you can get really high quality tracks without laser scanning them if you've got a really talented artist that also has really good information for the track. But iRacing just makes sure that their surfaces are really consistent. They capture all the individual road details and subtleties on the actual track surface itself, the actual drivable surface. But they also do a really good job of building the surrounding environment of the track, which often is lacking from non-laser scan tracks, or is often doesn't line up with reality too well in non-laser scan tracks. But the ultimate effect is, especially in virtual reality, is that the surroundings make the track feel really real, really solid, and really immersive. And they've the thing is, they've not gone over the top with shaders and effects. So in many ways, the tracks actually look more natural and neutral and clean. Again, I find it especially looks good in VR, probably because the VR headset's resolution might be a little bit lacking, but you don't get that sort of cinematic effect from iRacing. I think that, if anything, it's guilty more of looking on the simulatory side than the cinematic side. But I think on average, especially when you're in the midst of battling with someone else and you're focused on the driving, the tracks can actually be really quite immersive and just believable. Then when you add that end visual result of everything that we just said, combined with the actual fidelity of the track surface, I think you really have to hand it to iRacing with not only the quality of the laser scan they get, the data they got, the tracks they've got in the game, but also the artistic execution that goes into them. So well done again for the tracks. 5 points for Gryffindor. And finally, like my average night with a woman, we're going to end on a negative. iRacing is needlessly exclusionary and exclusive. This to me is one of the worst things about iRacing, because it's completely unnecessary. And given that iRacing aims to be basically the premier platform for sim racing, not just its own thing, it's, you know, they hype it to be the sim racing multiplayer platform, the god of sim racing. We are iRacing. American companies, you know, they like to hype themselves, so I'll forgive them a little bit. But, you know, they put themselves up there. I think it is rather disheartening that everything is behind a paywall, especially the iRacing forum. Now, the worst things with this is that it not only does it isolate pertinent information from all sim racers, and, you know, obviously with iRacing establishing themselves, and obviously people that can afford iRacing are putting money into that, it becomes a sort of it becomes a place where new sim racing stuff tends to get placed. All that information's locked behind the paywall, but also you find that it fosters this bizarre superiority complex that a lot of iRacers seem to suffer from. They've got this weird iRacing. I'm an iRacer, so I'm a legitimate sim racer. Anyone else that doesn't do iRacing is, you know, second-rate peasant class. Don't come into first class. We're iRacers. I mean, maybe it's due to the cost of the content, combined with the sort of encouraged illusion that iRacing is somehow intrinsically more valid than any other simulator, video game or hobby. Or maybe it's simply because iRacing offers the most entertainment value for people that actually really do click with the service. So, you know, they really connect with it because they actually do really enjoy it. But whatever the cause is, iRacing definitely seems to drive sim racers into this single simulator, single game land. It's iRacing or no racing, which to me, I just think it's a bit sad. You know, I'm a bit of a, I like to sleep around. Let's face it, I'm a bit easy. I like to have all the different simulators, and I think you can see different, you know, it's different value in the different simulators for the different things you want to get out from it. Again, I appreciate iRacing. Obviously, it's hyper competitive, and people that are hyper competitive, you know, you're gonna get the kind of attitudes that arise. But you know, it's just, I feel like even those people are missing out by not giving other simulators a chance, or getting into them, or just jumping to conclusions with different simulators, and just not giving them the time of the day. I don't know, maybe, you know, it's all about integration. Knock down the Berlin Wall of sim racing. I've basically just called iRacing communist Russia there. I don't know how we got to that, but there you go. I just wish that iRacing wasn't as exclusionary as it is, and I don't think the developers necessarily help with that. I think they benefit from it in some ways, even if it's not entirely intentional. I'm sure they're actually really nice guys, and they you know, just want everyone to be happy whilst putting meal on the table for their families. So, well, that's it really. We've just gone through all the positives and negatives, on the 5 biggest positives, the 5 biggest negatives with iRacing from my point of view at least. There will be some more there. I've had to cut this down a bit because I didn't want everyone to die of old age before the end of the video. But let me know in the comments what you actually really like and dislike about the sim, and we can cover it in future videos. We'll probably look at doing one of these for other simulators as well. I'm sure I'm going to get shouted at in the comments for some of the stuff I've said. I'd be loads of corrections about, you haven't done this right, you forced feedback, you've set it up wrong, what are you doing? You know, it always happens. I probably am wrong in many cases, but I have a fantastic shield of ignorance that defends me from feeling any hurt and allows my ego to remain intact. Well, there we go. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is indeed it. This race was a vague success. I'm going to spoil the end of it because, you know, it wasn't a high tier race, so you probably don't even care. We came in 2nd place after a valiant effort of trying to catch up with the first place guy. He bloody rocketed off. He probably had a better setup. I don't think he did, actually. I was driving awful, but what can you do? I'll be doing some more iRacing videos in general. I actually do really enjoy playing iRacing in VR, and I do like just having lots of cars around me. And of course, as I say, listening to frustrated Americans shout at each other in really thick southern accents. If you manage to maintain your arousal levels through all 22 minutes of this video, you definitely owe it to yourself to click the subscribe button. I certainly would as a viewer of this superb channel. Also, you can like and dislike. I'm sure they're going to be up and down. Until the next one, guys, thanks for watching, and goodbye.